Weishaupt was admitted to the Freemason Lodge of the Rite of Strict Observance in February 1777. He came to believe that the Mason lodges would be key to spreading the secret mission of the Perfectibilists. By April 1778, the group became known as the Order of the Illuminati and began recruiting among the professionals of the day, including church officials, academics, doctors, and lawyers. The Illuminati spread across Germany, having some success in joining and taking over lodges as well as starting their own. However, due to internal divisions within the Illuminati and increasing pressure from the Catholic Church, the Illuminati, Freemasonry, and other secret societies were banned by an edict of Charles Theodore, Elector of Bavaria in 1784. The group was banned multiple times in the following years, as many believed that they had not disbanded and continued their secret mission to overthrow monarchy and religion. Theodore would later seize and publish documents relating to the Bavarian Illuminati. Weishaupt had his position at the university taken, and he was banished from Bavaria. This was effectively the end of the Illuminati. Of course, almost immediately after the banning of the group, theories emerged claiming the Illuminati continued to influence geopolitics, especially during the French Revolution. One of the earliest polemics against the Illuminati was an essay published in 1789 by Jean-Pierre Louis de Locher titled Essay on the Illuminati Sect. British physicist John Robison published Proofs of a Conspiracy soon after, claiming the Illuminati had infiltrated the French Revolution through the Jacobins and Freemason lodges. In fact, when describing the group which had been secretly influencing the direction of the revolution, Robison emphatically stated, quote, "The association of which I have been speaking is the Order of the Illuminati." Robison also wrote about Weishaupt's tumultuous relationship with the Jesuits. He says that by 1777, Weishaupt had been, quote, "scheming the establishment of an association or order which in time should govern the world." Weishaupt reportedly told ex-Jesuits who had recently found themselves banned they could regain their influence under a new name by, quote, "directing the education of youth." Unfortunately, Weishaupt was only successful in convincing 2 Jesuits to join his burgeoning secret society. After being rebuffed by the Jesuits, Weishaupt considered them to be his enemy. In 1780, Weishaupt partnered with Adolf Freiherr von Nigge for help advancing the Illuminati's message within Freemason lodges. Nigge was successful in growing the Illuminati's ranks, including by initiating Johann Bode, who would later become Weishaupt's second-in-command and was responsible for the German translation of Nicolas Bonneville's book, The Jesuits Driven Away from Masonry. However, by July 1784, Nigge quit the Illuminati, accusing Weishaupt of authoritarian leadership and of being a, quote, latent Jesuit. Could Nigge's departure have led him to share concerns of Jesuit infiltration with his initiate Johann Bode, who then inspired Nicolas Bonneville to write The Jesuits Driven Away from Masonry? It certainly appears so. Thus, the accusations between the Masons, the Jesuits, and the Illuminati have been raging for centuries and continue to this day. What about the idea that the Illuminati practiced, or still practices, rituals linked to ancient mystery religions? Can a lineage truly be traced from the Knights Templar and Solomon's Temple to today's secret societies? Many theories try to link Freemasons and the Illuminati to ancient secret societies, but the exact path is unclear. While the modern version of these groups clearly have an ideological and spiritual thread connecting them to the Knights Templar, Rosicrucians, and ancient mystery religions of Greece and Rome, proving a direct, unbroken lineage is far more difficult than some conspiracy researchers may want to believe. What can be proven is that the Bavarian Illuminati was likely not the first secret society aimed at world revolution, and not even the first to use the name Illuminati or the Illuminated. In 1527, Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits, was suspected by the Spanish Inquisition to be part of the sect of mystic Christians known as the Alumbrados, or the Illuminated. Loyola would be allowed to live after receiving a verbal lashing for his apparent sympathies with the Alumbrados. This version of the Illuminati was said to have made their way to Spain from Italy. They believed in the then heretical idea of a direct communion or knowledge with God through meditations and visions. In 1525, the Inquisitor General issued an edict of faith directed against all individuals who call themselves enlightened, abandoned, and perfect. Loyola became acquainted with suspected alumbrados, including by leading a group looking for spiritual guidance. During the meetings of this group, it was reported that some women had seizures, vomited, fainted, and claimed to have visions of the devil. This surely put Loyola on the Inquisition's radar. Although the Illuminati is often used as the default name for the true ruling class, the name and the concept has been degraded to a meme which shows up in music, movies, pop culture, science fiction, and conspiracy theories about the top of the pyramid of power. The concept has become a punching bag for those who want to give a name to the force which is manipulating our world. Could the leaders of the Masons, the Jesuits, and the Zionists be the real Illuminati? Are the Illuminati the leaders of the alleged Committee of 300? Is it possible that the top of the pyramid may at times refer to itself as the illuminated or the enlightened ones? This could be true, and yet there is little credible evidence directly connecting the historical Bavarian Illuminati to the ruling class of today. Perhaps to find the top of the pyramid, we must go even further back in history to study the houses of nobility and royalty. The Venetian Black Nobility. The Venetian Black Nobility, or simply the Black Nobility, was briefly discussed by John Coleman in his work on the Committee of 300. Coleman writes, quote, "America is run not by 60 families, but by 300 families, and England is run by 100 families. These families are intertwined through marriage, companies, banks, and not to mention ties to the Black Nobility, Freemasonry, the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, and so on." Coleman makes several other references to this ancient Black Nobility throughout his book. He also names the families he believes makes up this power structure. Before we name names, let's dive into the history of the concept of the Black Nobility. The term Black Nobility originated in September 1870 when the Kingdom of Italy's army marched into Rome to overthrow Pope Pius IX and take control of the Quirinal Palace. Pope Pius declared himself a prisoner in the Vatican, where he remained for the next 59 years. Aristocratic families who supported the Pope closed their palace doors in protest, garnering them the nickname the Black Nobility by those loyal to King Victor Emmanuel II. By 1929, the Lateran Pax would be signed between the king, Benito Mussolini, and Pope Pius. The treaty had the effect of recognizing Vatican City as an independent sovereign state controlled by the Holy See and provided for dual citizenship for the Black Nobility in Italy and Vatican City. The Kingdom of Italy also agreed to recognize all noble titles granted by the Pope. However, recognition of the Black Nobility was short-lived. By 1968, Pope Paul VI issued a document abolishing the perks and advantages granted to the Black Nobility. This included stripping the noble families of their Vatican City license plates and discounted rates on food. According to the mainstream history, this was effectively the end of the power and influence of the Black Nobility. The concept of Venetian nobility dates back centuries. Powerful Italian noble families such as the Colonna, Massimo, Orsini, Ruspoli, Pallavicini, Theodoli, and Borghese gravitated towards Rome to maintain ties with the Vatican. Some even became popes. Other powerful noble families gathered in Venice and Genoa, Italy, building their wealth off trade route monopolies. The families grew in wealth as the port of Venice became a gateway for trade to Europe, the Adriatic Sea, and the Middle East and Asia. These families also provided military support for the Crusaders, which helped Venice become an economic and military power. Over time, these families gained complete control over Venice. Prior to 1172, Venice was governed through the appointment of the Republic's highest official position, the Doge, who administered Venice for over 1,000 years. After that date, the election of the Doge was now the responsibility of the Committee of 40, made up of these same noble families. The theory is that these powerful families maintained control of Italy throughout the following centuries. While this group is sometimes known as the Venetian Black Nobility, owing to their origins in Venice, Italy, their power and influence spread beyond the peninsula and throughout Europe, including in London, England, with the establishment of the financial district in the city of London. Many researchers now believe the Black Nobility families can be found in Italy, Germany, Switzerland, the UK, the Netherlands, and Greece. As you research this concept of the Black Nobility or the Venetian Black Nobility, you'll find numerous lists from different sources attempting to identify these elite families and trace their influence throughout history. In the Committee of 300, John Coleman named several families he claimed were or are still part of the Black Nobility. These include the Giustiniani family of Rome and Venice, Pierpaolo Luzzati Fequi's Black Nobility of Venice, Umberto Ortolani, infamous for his involvement with the P2 Masonic Lodge, the Orsini family, the Doria family, the financiers of the Spanish Habsburgs, Elie de Rothschild of the French Rothschild family, the Alba family in Spain, Queen Elizabeth II of England of the black nobility Guelphs, and Sir Moses Montefiore, the man who established the first Jewish settlement in Palestine. Other lists claiming to be the current families of the black nobility commonly include the Italian houses of Medici and Corsini, the Swedish house of Bernadotte, the House of Bourbon, originating in France with monarchs currently in Spain and Luxembourg, the House of Grimaldi, the ruling family of Monaco, the House of Guelph in the UK, which connects to the House of Windsor, the current monarchs of the UK, via the House of Hanover, the House of Habsburg in Austria, the House of Oldenburg in Denmark, and formerly in Greece and Norway, and the House of Orange-Nassau in the Netherlands, among others. I want to make it clear, confirming that these noble families and their descendants are the true ruling class is difficult. Some claim that these families are the true top of the pyramid and the so-called Committee of 300, pointing to their historic land ownership across Europe as evidence. We know that Cecil Rhodes and the Round Table groups worked with the Rothschilds to spread their influence around the world and to reabsorb America into the British Empire. Is it possible that the members of the various Round Table groups worked with the black nobility to manipulate world events over the last 200 years? Absolutely. I believe that at least some of these families, as well as members of the Vatican and the Jesuits, worked with the Zionist and Jewish bankers and the Freemasons and other secret societies to maintain their iron grip on humanity's destiny. While the preceding investigations have focused on the various groups choosing to manipulate humanity, there are those who believe that what we are facing is not only a battle of psychopathic, corrupted humans versus a free humanity, but rather a spiritual battle for the very soul of our species. Occult researcher Mark Passio is a former member of the Church of Satan who claims to have learned the hidden goals of a worldwide movement of Satanists and what he calls dark occultists. Passio spent time as a member and gained insights into the ways in which these dark occultists operate.
Well, in my youth, I became disillusioned with organized religion. My family was the kind of family that sort of went along to get along and just believed whatever was the popular aspect of the culture of South Philadelphia Roman Catholic background. I became very disillusioned with organized religion, and I sought out the opposite of that in my anger and angst regarding organized religion. And I encountered the work of Anton LaVey, then the high priest of the Church of Satan. And I basically devoured all of the material regarding formal Satanism in the LaVeyan style. And after doing that, I became a rank and file member of the Church of Satan, joined that organization, and subsequently I started a band that espoused the satanic ideology. And I wrote for small music fanzines, as they were called in the 80s and 90s, on the topic of LaVeyan Satanism. LaVey himself became aware of some of my work. LaVey himself offered me a priesthood in the Church of Satan and offered me to head what is known as a grotto. That's their equivalent of covens in the Philadelphia area. I did accept the appointment of priesthood and became a regular priest in the Church of Satan, which is their ranking just above regular membership. And I declined the grotto leadership because I saw Satanism and dark occultism in general back then as something that was just purely individualistic. After that, my involvement became a little bit deeper because I was given some people and organizations that did have their own grottos in my tri-state area, and I attended some of the gatherings and rituals of those local grottos. That is when I became fully aware that Satanism and occultism, dark occultism in general, was not what I had previously believed it to be, which was just a way to psychologically get a leg up, so to speak, on your fellow man by holding knowledge that they lack and then exploiting that ignorance as a power differential.
This is the sign of the horns, a curse sign, the two fingers extended. One of them's the pox sign, that's three fingers extended.
A pox on you?
A pox on you. During the Middle Ages, this was used.
But instead, this was something that was wide scale in our world, in our culture, and it was being used by these eclectic varieties of groups of people and networks to seize power, to infiltrate all of our institutional organizations. And when I realized that every institution, there were people in positions of high levels of power that were involved in Satanism and the dark occult, seeing this in person at some of these rituals that I attended, I realized there was much more to this than met the eye, and these people were working together to ultimately bring about the enslavement of human beings. Upon realizing that, that's when I ceased my involvement and started to blow the whistle on how this all worked.
It is this group whom Passio believes are at the top of the pyramid of power.
From my perspective, the pyramid of control culminates in the human domain with who I have referred to in my work as the dark occultists of the world. And I would segment that into two groups. The lower end of it are Satanists. The higher end of it I refer to as dark Luciferians. Those who truly have the knowledge of natural law in hand, reject it out of their own pure egotism and selfishness, want to become God, and they want to do that by getting other people to build their compartmentalized system of human slavery for them, do the dirty work, bloody their hands, which these dark Luciferians will not do themselves. They just issue the commands and pay people. That's who runs things from the perspective of the human domain. I have my own beliefs regarding it going into the spiritual slash non-terrestrial slash extra dimensional domain. However, substantiating that is somewhat more difficult, so that's conjectural. I would say it does pass off into the spiritual extra dimensional realm, and that ultimately even these people at the highest levels of the human domain of power are taking marching orders from others, and they are puppets.
The otherworldly influence. Conspiracy researcher David Icke has referred to the ruling class at the top of the pyramid as the global cult. Regarding who he thinks is running this cult, he is most well known for his statements in the late 1990s claiming that shape-shifting reptilians are at the top.
The reptilian entities possess their hybrid stooges, and the secret society network within this reality manipulates the stooges and their gophers and agents into the positions of power.
Icke has alternatively referred to these reptilians as archons and Anunnaki. In his 1999 book, The Biggest Secret, the book that will change the world, Icke writes, quote, "Putting together the mass of evidence, views, research, and opinions that I have read or heard almost daily these past years, I feel the Anunnaki are a race from a reptile genetic stream." He points to statements in the Bible and other historical accounts of serpents and snakes as evidence of this reptilian race interacting with humanity. In 2024, I asked David Icke if he still stands by these statements and asked him to elaborate on his thesis.
When you have a perception, the perception dictates your behavior. So where does the perception come from? It comes from your state of consciousness. Your state of consciousness dictates your perception, which then dictates your behavior. And if you look at religions, and one of the common themes, it is that there is a non-human, highly negative, psychopathic force. I've heard these common themes all over the world of a highly negative force, which I say is a state of inverted consciousness that is manipulating human society. So if we start at the top of this pyramid, it's that state of consciousness. It's inverted, it's chaotic, it's psychopathic. But it works through endless different levels of what you might call form. So it will work through form that will take a reptilian form and other non-human forms. And the levels I'm talking about up to this point are all outside of human sight. And to really grasp what is happening, we've really got to understand the illusory nature of the reality that we're experiencing. And for me, every child should be taught at the first earliest time they can grasp it, this simple fact that when you look through your eyes into any space, you're not seeing everything in that space. You're seeing a tiny band of frequency called visible light, which is all that we can see. And the entities, the consciousness that I'm talking about that's behind all this is in that realm outside of visible light. Though people say to me, well, why can't we see them then? Because you can virtually see nothing, mate. That's why. And then you have to have a means by which this consciousness and these entities operating outside the human frequency band can manipulate the human world. And this is where this global cult comes in. The consciousness is the top of the pyramid. And everything in any kind of form, whether it's a more etheric form like the entities outside of human sight, whether it's a dense physical form like those within human sight, they're all possessed, yes, dictated to in their perceptions and thus their behavior, thus their lack of empathy, their lack of compassion. They're all expressions of this consciousness.
Catherine Austin Fitts, the founder of the Solari Report and former Assistant Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under the first Bush administration, uses the term Mr. Global to describe who she believes is at the top of the pyramid.
Who is Mr. Global? Mr. Global is my nickname for the secret governance system. We live on a planet Earth, where the governance system is secret. Trying to understand how it works is like peeling an onion down through many, many layers. It helps to understand the financial system and how the financial system relates to the assets it manages or it finances.
She also believes there is the potential for the top of the pyramid to involve life from another planet.
So we have the group that meets annually in the United States in the Bohemian Grove. We have the Bilderbergers, which includes sort of all the Western world. We have the Council of Foreign Relations in New York. We have the Trilateral Commission. And of course, there's a multitude of secret societies. Many of my questions relate to whether or not we're dealing with the interaction between our civilization and one or more what I call breakaway civilizations of groups that have much higher technology than is commonly understood by most people on planet Earth. And is that breakaway civilization a group of humans? You know, who are they? Where'd they come from? Or is it non-human? There's some people who believe it's non-human, but again, an unanswered question. I have a lot of questions. I think we're being impacted by interdimensional intelligence. Christians would call them angels and demons. Other religions have different names for them, but we're dealing with intelligence from other dimensions, and that is also in play, in my opinion.
On the other end of the spectrum, Adam Green believes theories about Satanists, Luciferians, and otherworldly evil only serve to reinforce the Judeo-Christian myths, which he says are the root of our problems.
Satan is a Judeo concept, and in Judaism, Satan is the adversary to God, but works for God. God created him, he allows him to operate and provides a divine role of tempting and testing, and is the evil inclination and prosecuting and accusing sinners. Everybody that blames everything on satanic cults and Satanism is ultimately just scaring people towards the God of Israel, the God of the Bible, and Jesus as the solution. So I see all this satanic panic just to be fear-mongering that scares people into the churches.
Personally, I fall somewhere in the middle. I don't buy into the Abrahamic religions, and I don't subscribe to the idea that what we are witnessing is the story of revelations from the Bible playing out in front of our eyes. However, I do believe what we are witnessing is a spiritual battle. For me, the battle happens every day in our individual hearts and minds. When an individual is consumed by their trauma, their fear, their insecurities and doubts, the predator class is winning. When we are incapable of overcoming our personal traumas and we look to external sources to help us, whether that be drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, or government, we are outsourcing the important self-work that must be done for humanity to rise above our challenges. This is a spiritual battle for the soul of humanity, and it's up to each of us to do the necessary work so we may be an example to our fellow brothers and sisters in their own journeys to healing. By healing ourselves, we contribute to the collective healing of humanity, and through that, we can topple the pyramid of power.
You don't need a formal conspiracy when interests converge. These people went to the same universities and fraternities. They're on the same boards of directors. They're in the same country clubs. They have like interests. They don't need to call a meeting. They know what's good for them, and they're getting it. And there used to be 7 oil companies. There are now 3. It will soon be 2. The things that matter in this country have been reduced in choice. There are 2 political parties. There are a handful of insurance companies. There are about 6 or 7 information things. But if you want a bagel, there are 23 flavors because you have the illusion. You have the illusion of choice. Right. You don't get the real important choice. There's no freedom of choice. That's a great point.
While some of the researchers we have interviewed feel strongly that there is one single group or organization to point to, others believe that the truth is a bit more complex. Richard Grove is a forensic historian who has been researching the roundtable groups for 2 decades. He does not believe there is one ultimate bad guy sitting atop the hierarchy.
I think it's a pyramid without a capstone. I think that there's a group of groups, and those groups have individuals in there, and some of those individuals are very powerful, but they can't coexist individually. They're grouped together now in a security alliance, and they've weeded out the unnecessary parts, and they're merging all the other relational parts. Like, it's down to Amazon and Costco, I love you in the future, which is going to win, right? So they're whittling down our options while they've already reached the technical acumen that they seek to deliver, and they're scuttling Western society to build their New World Order, Elysium separation from the people type of New World Order, Brave New World 1984 situation.
Richard Spence is a historian and professor emeritus at the University of Idaho and author of Wall Street and the Russian Revolution. Spence has spent decades understanding the role of secret societies and conspiracy on historical geopolitical events. He is equally skeptical that we can easily point the finger at one culprit.
Who's at the top of the pyramid? Or maybe to put it more simply, who rules the world? Is it the international oligarchy? Is it the Illuminati? Is it the high bank? What sort of? I'm not sure that those names really matter. What kind of a name do you have to have? Why even have a name? Why not simply be consciously aware of the power that you have? So, I am not, for my own part, firmly convinced that any such ruling group exists. I'm not saying they don't. I am reasonably convinced that there are one or more, perhaps numerous groups who think that they ought to be in that role and may in fact be competing with each other. That's another kind of scary idea, that you don't have one group of entitled elitists trying to run things. You have competing factions among them. In fact, given the nature of human beings, that's probably more likely. Now, I know that that's probably a very unsatisfying way of looking at it, because I haven't told you exactly what to look for, but they're there in one form or another. How much power they actually have, whether they are truly the masters of the universe, or they're a group of entitled, deluded people who think that they should be, there's something going on.
G. Edward Griffin, author of The Creature from Jekyll Island and a researcher of the pyramid since the 1950s, believes it is not a person at the top of the pyramid, but rather an ideology.
It really boils down to 2 things. The world is and has for a long time been in the grips of a war between an ideology called collectivism, and the opposite is individualism. And all of these things that we're trying to choose between communism, fascism, Nazism, etc., they are variants, merely variants of this thing called collectivism. I don't care what gender or how much money the person makes. I don't care about any of that. Are they collectivists or are they individualists? So now we have to learn what that means. And so I think it's so important, by the way, that I've devoted the last several years of my life trying to clarify this issue. I think that people fall for the trickery of this argument of collectivism versus individualism, mainly because there are collectivists who are definitely trying to make sure that they do get confused. All the greatest crimes of the world are committed supposedly for your behalf. You have to do all the things that the government wants you to do. Why? Because it's for your best interest, the greater good or the greater number. And if you don't go along with it, you're a bad person because you don't care about other people. That's the argument they always use. And so the answer is why people fall for it is because it's constantly being presented to them and being revered as though it is a gospel truth. But once you see the light, once you understand it, then of course the trick doesn't work anymore. Once you know what the magician is doing and distract you while he takes the pea from one hand and puts it in the other one, once you see it, then you're finally out of the woods. As the saying goes, once the bell is rung, it can never be unrung.
In the end, we may be able to identify specific names and organizations who are playing a role, but in doing so, we risk overlooking a crucial aspect of the pyramid of power. While our attention has been trained on the external forces which attempt to control the destiny of humanity, we ought not forget the importance of personal responsibility. Yes, the intelligence agencies have the power to indoctrinate and spy on our most personal secrets. And when they work with the corporate media apparatus and the controlled mainstream alternative media, they absolutely can shape our perception of reality. No one can deny the dangers posed by big pharma and the medical cartel, or the toxicity of big agriculture and their pesticides. We can't ignore the very real influence of the foundations and the harm caused by the pedo class. However, we can take action in our own lives which lead to more personal and collective sovereignty.
So who are the ultimate shadowy figures, the final boss in the hierarchy of evil? I don't exactly know, and I don't exactly care. Yeah, there absolutely are organizations and individuals who've been viewing and treating the rest of us like livestock for a very long time. But even the most powerful people in the world, even the nastiest people in the world, they're still only symptoms of the real problem. They're not the cause of it. And as long as we, the people, believe that government is legitimate and necessary, the worst people in the world will always be first in line to exploit that belief for their own benefit. Whether you're talking about banking establishments funding both sides of every war, or secret organizations of nasty psychos constantly playing their divide and conquer games, or down to the politicians who are just each playing the game to see how much they can enrich and empower themselves out of it, and the left and right both totally do that, all the way down to just some sadistic moron with a badge on his own little power trip. All of that entire game, all of that is the inevitable result of the belief in political authority, the idea that we actually need rulers, that's legitimate. So who's the ultimate cause of this? In one way, we are. We the people. When we think and act like obedient subjects, empowering and enriching the people who claim the right to rule us and going along with whatever they say, of course, nasty psychopaths are going to be there to jump into the role of slave master. But we're still their power supply. Without us enabling all of that and paying for it with taxes and with obedience, even the most despicable psychopaths in the world wouldn't have any power at all.
Are you a patriotic American?
Yes, sir.
Eager to do your part?
Yes, sir.
Then there's something important you can do.
Oh, boy, I'll do it. I'll do it.
Shall I tell you what it is?
Yes,
Your income tax.
Income tax?
Yes, and it's your privilege, not just your duty, but your privilege to help your government by paying your tax and paying it promptly. Your country is at war. Your country needs you.
This earth.
Researcher James Corbett believes we are asking the wrong question.
The question, who is at the top of the pyramid, is the wrong question, because I don't think that this is about individuals. Of course, there are individuals in positions of power, and we could look at many ways of identifying them. David Rothkopf, who was the head of Kissinger and Associates for many years, and a very important member of the global cabal, wrote back in 2007 about the superclass, which he identified as 6,000 people who were able to act transnationally and be able to basically enact any agenda across national boundaries. They weren't necessarily people in government, they were people in corporations or finance or international positions, and he thought this was a great thing. Yes, there is a superclass that exists that does have that kind of power, but it is not the people that are really the top of the pyramid. What is at the top of the pyramid fundamentally is an ideology. It is the ideology of centralization of control in the hands of a few powerful people. And once we frame the question in the proper way, rather than who is at the top of the pyramid, what is at the top of the pyramid, I think we can arrive at a better answer for how to solve this problem. Because if the question is who is at the top of the pyramid, and we identify the individual names of the individual people who are in certain positions of power, then the obvious logic of the situation is, well, we get rid of those people. So we get rid of those people and everything will be better because the top of the pyramid has been removed. But in reality, as I think everyone understands, if you removed those particular individuals from their particular positions of power, there would be 1 million people trying to jump into those positions as quickly as possible to take that power for themselves because they believe in centralized authority. They believe in the idea that a few people should be ruling over, managing, stewarding over the masses. So fundamentally, what we're against is that idea. And if we can delegitimize that idea in the minds of the people, then it does not matter who is sitting in those positions of power, because power will not exist, will not function in a society where people do not recognize the legitimacy of that power.
This series has been focused on understanding whether there exists an international cartel which covertly manipulates the world for their own benefit. Well, after spending 5 years producing 16 mini-documentaries and thousands of hours of research, I'm confident a network of intelligence agencies, secret societies, NGOs, think tanks, world leaders, Zionists and technocrats secretly conspire to achieve goals which conflict with the interests of most people. As we've shown throughout this series, the forces behind the pyramid of power are fundamentally anti-human, pushing a eugenicist agenda that likely spans centuries, if not millennia. The question then is, what can we actually do to counter this agenda?
So I think the good news message of the pyramid of power is so many people are discovering that there is a pyramid of power. And once people realize that government is illegitimate, immoral, illogical, and is being run as a criminal enterprise, they're open to alternatives, and the number one fastest growing political movement in the United States and in the world appears to be voluntarism, or the idea that all relations between human beings must be voluntary, that nobody has rights that other people don't, that nobody has an exemption from morality, especially the government, and that the world is really a self-organizing system, and that everything the government does would be done better, faster, and cheaper by the free market, by mutual aid societies, by armed protective service providers, by dispute resolution companies, by insurance companies, nonprofits, and genuine charities, and that we simply don't need government. And at the Art of Liberty Foundation, we call that the one-way revolution, because once most people realize that you don't really need government, and that the government has been running unethically manipulative techniques to get people's obedience and fealty and adoration, well, most people don't like to be tricked, they don't like to be chumped, and they're out. And that's a revolution that's only going in one direction.
I've said it in every episode of the Pyramid of Power. The people are the answer. This isn't abstract or utopian. Our actions, or inaction, will directly shape the world we leave for future generations. I don't believe our problems can be solved through politics or voting. The machine is simply too vast and controlled for a real evolution of humanity to come from the ballot box.
It's true. We are aliens. But what are you going to do about it? It's a two-party system. You have to vote for one of us.
He's right. This is a two-party system.
That doesn't mean it's hopeless. It means we must wake up, grow up, and stop playing the games placed before us by the predator class. Rather than focus on national politics, we should invest our energy into building local freedom communities in our neighborhoods, towns, and cities. Decentralized strategies like freedom cells offer a path forward. By organizing locally, we can focus our efforts on building local food systems in the form of community gardens, urban farms, and permaculture-based communities. We can unplug from big tech apps, operating systems, phones, and laptops. We can support each other as we opt out of the growing technocratic control grid.
I call this approach exit and build. Instead of trying to reform broken, corrupt systems, we focus on creating the ones we want. It's like the idea of voting with your dollar, but applied to all areas of your life.
If you oppose harmful food systems, for example, you opt out and support local farmers or buy from ethical producers that align with your values. In addition to avoiding big tech and mainstream food systems, you can also reject the financial control grid by using cash and alternative currencies. Refuse facial recognition at airports, stadiums, and on your devices. Take a stand against digital ID systems, which are rapidly advancing. These actions are vital for the preservation of liberty. Opting out is important, but it's only part of the solution. We must also build parallel systems that challenge the dominant culture. I encourage everyone to learn more about exit and build strategy, freedom cells, and the philosophy of agorism, which focuses on building these parallel systems. Visit thepyramidofpower.net and check out the Solutions tab for a refresher on the ideas shared in this series. It's also important to clarify that opting out and building parallel systems doesn't mean running from the New World Order. We should still resist tyranny whenever possible. During COVID-1984, massive protests showed people they weren't alone and sometimes helped overturn oppressive policies. Of course, in many places the protests did not stop the march of tyranny. Nevertheless, as we exit and build, we must also raise our voices against policies that hinder our vision of a free world. Resist the rise of the police state wherever and however you safely can.
The solution is the same no matter who is ultimately in control of that structure of power. The solution is to say no to evil, the lost word, the word of all power.
We must get comfortable saying no to tyrants and set an example for future generations. If we don't, we should not be surprised if authoritarianism rises and freedom dies. We are the last defense for a free humanity.
If this series has helped you understand the world better, spread the word. Download it, buy our DVDs, and share it on USB drives. The information war is still raging, and you are the only hope to awaken new hearts and minds.
If there you are as one person looking at this huge authoritarian monstrosity that's been around for ages and it basically has unlimited money and resources and power, of course you're going to feel hopeless and powerless. But it isn't just you against that big, huge thing. The victims of authoritarianism always vastly outnumber the perpetrators. The game doesn't work any other way. And that's why the control freaks are constantly trying to pit us against each other. Men versus women, black versus white, rich versus poor, dividing people by religions or nationalities or anything they can think of. Anything they can find to keep us fearing and hating each other. As long as we're screaming and snarling at each other, the control freaks in power who are robbing all of us, they know they have nothing to fear. But when the day comes that all of us mere mortal peasants stop being tricked into fighting each other and stop bickering over which master we should bow to and start actually disobeying and resisting anyone who claims the right to rule us, that's when tyranny and corruption end. Not by an election, not by legislation, by people thinking and acting like people who own themselves. And that is when people will see and will all the way realize the power they've always had the whole time.
The ultimate solution to defeating the power structure of our world that has created human slavery on Earth is for each individual to elevate their own level of consciousness to the point where they fully understand objective morality and natural law and how it works and operates in our world. And then to teach that to other people in as wide and as free of a way as possible in whatever methods of media creation that they can do, and put that information out into the general public so that others can learn from it.
Finally, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the heaviness of the topics that we've covered.
We've talked about false flags, overthrowing of governments, murder, child abuse, and psychological manipulation. While I believe it's important that we take time to understand the true nature of our world, if conducting this research makes you miserable or you feel hopeless after watching this series, then they've already won.
Do not allow yourself to be sucked into a pit of nihilism and believing that all hope is lost.
As long as we are alive, as long as we are breathing, there is still hope. Not hope in false political heroes and reformism, but a true hope in the potential for an awakening humanity to shift into action. Awareness alone isn't enough. Being informed means little if it only leads to inaction and despair.
And I think people are starting to recognize that there is an agenda towards centralization of power and centralization of control. And that is key, because once people start to at least be able to identify what is happening, then it's, I think, quite obvious. Well, if we want to go in the opposite direction of the way they, them, those are trying to take us, well, then we have to do the opposite of what they're doing. Rather than putting more and more power in fewer and fewer hands and centralized positions of control, we have to move towards decentralized systems. We have to bring things down more local. We have to create communities of support for ourselves so that we will be able to not just survive, but actually really thrive, whatever these people in presumed positions of power are doing. I think once it is framed in those terms, for people who are starting to at least be able to identify this agenda, I think the logic speaks for itself.
I believe we need to continue to educate and empower our brothers and sisters and exit from these slavery systems and expose the power where necessary. We need to move beyond simply being awake and towards being activated, towards actively working on the liberation of humanity.
Whatever you do, don't give up. Remember, you are not alone. The 7 generations are counting on us, and our ancestors are walking with us. We can overcome and thrive in the face of this generational evil, which is attempting to subvert the beauty and the potential of humanity. Thank you for watching. Until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.
To learn more about these topics, visit thepyramidofpower.net to see our transcript and list of books and documentaries.